Doug, somebody writes in to say, I've heard people saying that they've become better people through the use of psychedelics. It kind of freaks me out, but friends say they've had major personal breakthroughs. It almost sounds religious. What do you think?
Yeah, it almost sounds religious because it is religious. And I would say, apart from the language of freaking out, I think it should be highly concerning. I would tell Christians to stop it. Don't.
Good advice. Stop it.
Stop it. But do my best, Bob Newhart. Stop it. Now, if someone says, "Well, what about microdosing?" Right?
Yeah, sure.
I took 3 atoms of LSD, and I would say, well, what's the point? What's the point? If you microdose, then I would have a hard time convincing myself that you're not kidding yourself about your breakthroughs. If I take so little of it that nobody can tell, and no test would be able to ascertain that it was present, then I think that you're maybe projecting your solutions. Right. If you are taking psychedelics full tilt, right? If you're doing the Dr. Timothy Leary thing where you're pursuing enlightenment that way, I think that there's a very grave danger involved here. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about this.
Okay.
I believe that we live in a spiritual world where it's not just matter. And I believe the mind is spiritual. So rational thought is a spiritual activity. Reading a book is a spiritual activity. How can Augustine put his thoughts down on paper thousands of years ago, and going through the process of printing and translation and stuff, I read something on the page and I extract from that page what he was thinking thousands. There's something spooky.
And you've entered into a conversation with him.
Yeah, there's something spooky about that. Right. So I believe that mankind is body, soul, and spirit all together. We inhabit a spiritual realm. And when the ancient ascetics, both pagan and Christian, would fast for 40 days, let's say, and then they had visions. Jesus fasted for 40 days, and then he was tempted by the devil. He had this encounter with the spiritual realm, right? So I believe that spiritual realm is really there, and I believe that we, in our day-to-day mundane existence, don't really we're not really aware of it, right? But I believe that there are certain heightened states of consciousness that people can get into where they are made aware of it. So, all right. So, and I think that that's true of pagans as well. It's just that if a pagan enters the spiritual realm, he's entering that spiritual realm unprotected. He's going over to the dangerous part of town without a bodyguard. A Christian like John the Baptist or Jesus or is in a different position. He goes into that place protected by the Almighty, and it's an appointed sort of way. Now, what I think hallucinogenic drugs do is they sort of pick you up by the ankles and pitch you into that realm.
They open the door to that world.
They open the door to that world. So I'm not prepared to say that, it's all just brain fritzing.
Right.
Or like a particularly bad pepperoni dream.
Okay.
Right? Although I'm not denying that either. There is such a thing as brain fritzing. But I think what happens is when people start experimenting with hallucinogenic drugs, psychedelic drugs, they don't know what kind of realm they're entering, and they don't have the protections of the word and the spirit.
And they're not entering into it in a lawful way.
Right. And they're entering into it in a very lazy way, right? Yeah. The lazy man's way to seeing bizarre sights.
So, okay, but if somebody pushes back and says, right, but I'm not having hallucinations, or I'm microdosing, so I'm not going there. I'm getting these other little side health benefits or something like that.
So if someone's microdosing, my critique would be, I don't think you're sinning with drugs. I don't think you're guilty of substance abuse. I think you're guilty of kidding yourself.
Okay.
Right.
Doesn't it seem like, though, there's also something, I mean, I've talked about with my kids, things that are naughty adjacent, where it's, there's a pull to something that is just right next door to being naughty. And you've got enough probable deniability to say, I haven't done that. But there's a weird thrill of being just inside the aura of the naughtiness.
Right.
And they can always say, you're being a prude, you're being puritanical to resist or to object because I'm not committing that sin. But they're susceptible to this weird draw, and it never stays that way. It almost always pulls you into the naughty eventually.
I think so, yes. And I would go back to the previous question that we discussed about personality tests. What if? Why are you looking to drugs for the spiritual breakthrough? Right. It makes sense to me that if someone said, I want to root out this sin in my life, and so I fasted for 2 weeks. Okay. Well, the means and ends there make sense to me, right? Because your problem may be related to your lack of discipline, and the discipline of fasting might be the thing that God uses to. So, and it's got a long and ancient history. It's applauded in Scripture. There are safeguards that are put on it. Don't let anybody know you're fasting. That sort of thing. But with drugs, I needed a spiritual breakthrough, so I went to Walgreens.
Right.
That just I don't lack it.
Okay.
Before I go today, I want to tell you about a new documentary that Canon is releasing from my daughter, Rebekah Merkle. It is called Eve in Exile, and it comes out on May 6th. Eve in Exile is a movie about the failure of feminism and the future of femininity. Be sure to check it out exclusively on Canon Plus. Here's a quick look.
What does it mean to be a woman? Apparently nothing at all.
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
I can't.
Do
I'm
you
not a
believe the meaning
biologist.
of-
Our culture hates the idea of boundaries.
My body, my choice!
We just want there to be no rules, no lines, no definitions.
As a woman,
What is that?
was to each their own.
We're Christian women, and we want to live in the way God told us to. But we're looking out over this current playing field and wondering where on earth we are supposed to stand. Our daughters are born into the ruins of what used to be a Christian nation, and we are raising them in the wreckage of the West. What does obedience look like in this madhouse?